them before. These are my best sellers here. And a lot of these plants are wild. Lots are cultivated, but some of them I pick out of the wild. And those are the ones I'm going to speak about tonight. And I knew that I was driving to take Sylvia to track tonight. And I thought, I know I'm going to be forgetting something. And here it is, jewelweed, chickweed. There's just so many plants. I couldn't cover them all. But anyway, it's just fabulous that I can tell you some of them. So, who is a good candidate for trying herbal remedies? I imagine at least I'm in the right camp here for sure with number one, people who trust nature as a source of wellness. Well, people who join BRPA definitely trust, and they know that by going out in nature, it enhances their health. It enhances their joy. You know, you get good oxygen being out there. You get to see beauty. Beauty is a very important thing to have around. I heard a phrase once, beauty is the most potent force in the universe. And when you really think about it, it's such a beautiful phrase, but I can see the truth in it as well. We all know that we're so blessed to live around all this wonderful beauty, and it's wonderful that BRPA can help preserve some of that. Another good candidate are people who are sensitive to pharmaceutical drugs. Some people are just more sensitive and don't have good luck with pharmaceutical drugs. I know the only thing I'm allergic to is sulfa drugs and one other type of antibiotic. Other than that, I'm good. But anyway, you know, this is a good thing to keep in mind. And then a lot of people have seen hazardous results from pharmaceuticals, doctors, and hospitals. I'm not saying there's not a place for them. There's a total place for all of that. And in fact, I'm very grateful there is all of that. But in fact, the third biggest killer before COVID was doctors, pharmaceuticals, and hospitals, errors. And I just wish that herbs would be given a little more clout, or like if a herb hurt somebody, I think it would be in the paper. Like if it killed somebody, that would be all over the news. And I think all of us have seen like pretty scary things happen there. So just to keep an open mind that there might be other ways to help yourself stay well. And then, of course, the curious and open-minded people, well, I think that's all of you who were good enough to tune in tonight. So thank you for being curious and open-minded. And then ethnobotanists and biochemists who look at pharmacognosy and biochemical pathways. What's so wonderful about studying herbs now is that people can look at historical data and up-to-date current research on the herbs and their constituents, and see how they work. I mean, it's just fabulous to have all this information available to us. And yeah, so yeah, it's really great to make all these connections. Sometimes people think herbs are just so fake. It must be, you know, I just stepped on that plant. How could it do anything good for me? Well, you know, these are real remedies. And in fact, I love the example of coffee. Is the constituent caffeine or real, or just a folktale? Like, do you think what if your like neighbor lady just said, oh, try this beverage, it'll wake you up. And you're like, I don't think so. You know, that's just something you steeped in water. Well, it's a plant and it has real constituents. So I'm going to go through the seasons and talk about the different native plants. So I put some fun pictures for each of the seasons. So for spring, yay, we're in spring. This is a time to harvest roots, barks, and some of the spring ephemerals. So here's one of my favorites, violet. So violet is wonderful for, it's a very softening herb. If you've ever picked violets, you can tell that it kind of holds a cooling quality, and it's got a quality called demulcent, which is very softening and cooling. And then, so if you picture a hot inflamed condition, you can use something like this to balance it. Something like, well, chickweed would fit into this category of the cooling, demulcent herbs, and same with jewelweed. But violets, of course, are just so charming. Um, and as I said, they're good for hot conditions. Well, what if you had a really hot, inflamed, sore throat? This could be helpful. Or in the case of poison ivy, jewelweed, another cooling demulcent herb, is a classic herb for that. Another thing that violets can do, they're useful for improving lung function. And they're, I'm going to just say it here, but they are a folk remedy for cancer. I don't know the biochemical pathways there. But since I hang with professional herbalists, I have heard some great stories, especially in a poultice form, which is like a ground up herb or a mashed herb applied topically. But the most fun with this one is to make a syrup. And I have the recipe on the next slide, and it's very tasty. This one is called Heartsease. You can see the leaves are shaped like hearts. And I think all of us have that experience of when you see a violet, the first violets, it just kind of brings a smile to your face and lights up your heart. Some of the active constituents in violet are rutin and salicylates, and then saponins as well. And there's 13 species in Wisconsin. I'm still using Curtis, and I'd be curious to hear from some of you scientific types out there what resources that you use for current information on the native plants in Wisconsin, or the plants that escape cultivation, naturalized plants, such as mullein and burdock. So here's the violet syrup. And if anybody, I have a few recipes tonight. If anybody wants them, I'd be happy to share them. So you just collect your violets. It's nice if you could put them in a basket or a paper bag so they can wilt a little bit first. That just kind of concentrates them. And you have to cook this in a non-reactive pan, like a glass pan or stainless steel. And then you just use 1 cup tightly packed violets, flowers, and then you make the heavy syrup, which is boiling water and a cup of sugar, and you put those together and you let that sit for 24 hours so that beautiful purple color comes out. And then you can just bottle it, make sure to put a label on it with the date, and it's best refrigerated. I actually have that wonderful Violet that is a French liqueur, and that really makes some awesome looking martinis. So I dug up this slide like a half hour ago, but here was my wedding, David and my wedding cake, and the legendary Laura Lynch made our wedding cake, and it had 400 candied violets on it. It was just so beautiful. You can see we had a very casual wedding. David always regrets not moving those darn wires because this cake was such a masterpiece. Look at those roses. I still have some of those rose bushes she gave me. It just so it was divine. Okay, so here's a plant a lot of us love to hate, but not herbalists. We love dandelion. Why do we love dandelion? Because it does so much to help keep your liver functioning properly. And the liver is considered the seat of health in Chinese medicine. In fact, if you ever go to a Chinese practitioner, they can check your pulse and see how your liver is doing. I just love like Laurel Redmond with Red Sage Health. And it's so wonderful. There's so many modalities now of maintaining health that it's just kind of astounding. But the thing with a dandelion is that it has this great bitter flavor. And bitters are gaining popularity again, but bitters are very important for digestion. And we all know the American diet and just the gut, the way the gut is responding in America. It's just, there's so many people with bad digestion. This is a plant, it's everywhere. It could be super helpful. even just eating a couple leaves before a meal or putting it in your salads. So by taking a bitter flavor into your mouth before you have a meal, um, your mouth registers that bitter flavor and it sends a message up into your brain. And then that then your brain knows you're going to eat soon and sends a message to your gut to start producing more digestive juices. So by taking bitters, you can extract your vitamins and minerals better, and it makes for a more complete digestion. So like, who here gets an oil filter change in their car? Like everybody. And we really pay attention to that, don't we? Like we make sure that at every 5,000 miles or whatever it is for your car, you make sure to get your oil filter changed. And so why do you do that? You do it because you don't want your car to break down and you want it to run smoothly. Well, here's this common weed that you can eat that can help to push your liver, to really cleanse your liver. And it really helps with inflammation. If you can help, like, and that kind of makes sense, this whole analogy with the car, because, you know, just the whole gunked up situation that might happen if you never change your oil filter, it totally translates to your liver and the human body. So a lot of inflammation can happen, and inflammation shows up in so many different ways. It can really make a difference in your health in so many ways. You know, you can all be, I'm sure you're thinking of different inflammatory conditions that happen and cause pain. So
Jane, can we ask
yeah,
one question about the dandelions? You always hear
yeah.
people say just eat it in the spring, but is that a useful plant while it's growing all, way into the
Oh,
fall?
thanks. You know what? I just have it on full screen right now because it was covering up some of the pictures and covering up some of the words. So I appreciate you mentioning that, the questions. So they're more tasty in the spring before they bloom. Leaves
Okay.
are best collected before the plant blooms. And I'll cover that in another slide too, but they're just going to get more and more bitter and tough. So they're not delicious later, or they get less delicious, we could say. Um,
Okay.
so when I'm weeding in the spring, I like to just bring in a couple dandelions, maybe once a week or so, and just scrub them off and then simmer them for a little while and just take it like medicine. Just take a cup of dandelion decoction. That would include the root and the tops, and I'll just take it like medicine. This is such a great diuretic too, dandelion. In fact, pharmaceutical diuretics cause your body to, it leaches the phosphorus out of your body, but taking dandelion as a diuretic, it adds phosphorus and lots of other vitamins and minerals as well, magnesium, vitamins A, B, and E. And interestingly, just 2 fresh picked leaves a day is a day's worth of vitamin C. So this is really a potent powerhouse. And, you know, herbalists all around just really appreciate this. In fact, I use the flowers too as a topical for achy muscles and things like that. And then this kind of pairs well with this other weed I love, this not attractive necessarily, yellow dock. And it's also called curly dock. And the part used on this one is the root. This one is an iron powerhouse. It's used as a blood detoxifier, which kind of just equals another bitter herb. But this one has anthocyanins in it, which acts like a mild laxative, but it's really great for the liver. And this one helps to kick out toxins and promote better digestion too. I love this plant and I love taking the root, but I really do not like the way it tastes. I mean, I can take dandelion before I can take this because of those anthocyanins. They got bitter and pungent and a few things going for them that are not delicious. But I have a recipe coming up where they can be pretty good. So yeah, this one is great on the gallbladder. And there's thing in herbalism called the doctrine of signatures, where the plant gives you a clue on how it's used through its color, through where it grows, through its growth habit, the shapes of the leaves and morphology and things of that nature. So this one has a really yellow root when you cut it. And it is very helpful and helps to promote bile, so it's good for the liver as well. So when you have skin issues, this is the place to start, is with liver herbs. Your skin is your largest organ, and your liver is your first detox organ. So if your liver can't handle whatever is stored in your body as far as toxins, it's going to come out your skin. So you can really make some improvements by addressing your liver. So this is a fun one, and I do make this every year. There's something in the health food store called Swiss mineral something or another, and I think it's about $42. But if you can just collect dandelion and dandelion and yellow dock roots, and just chop them up, put them in some water, and then simmer that down 50%. Ooh, let me see here. Well, anyway, you simmer it down 50%, and then you add, then you let that sit overnight. And then most of the qualities should have gone into the decoction. A decoction is when you boil the water with herbs in it. An infusion is when you boil the water and put it over the herbs. So then you just measure that after you strain out the roots and add an equal proportion of molasses. And you can store that in your fridge, and it tastes really good because it's half molasses. But there you go, an iron-rich blend, a mineral-rich elixir. Free, just for a little bit of your time. Okay, let's see here. Okay, I'm sorry, I got to get back to the view, the whole slideshow. Okay, so now we're just, oh no, okay, well, I can make it go through there quickly. All right, so now for summer, this is when you harvest the leaves and the flowers. This is one of my favorites, plantain. We've all stepped on this plant as we walk through some grassy places that haven't been sprayed with broadleaf chemicals. This one the Europeans brought over because it's so useful. My favorite thing to do with this is if somebody in the crowd gets stung by a bee or even a mosquito, you can pick one of those leaves and rub it on that bee sting, and the bee sting goes away. It's just, I've had a group of kids come out to my farm, and one of them got stung by a bee once, and that was right after I told them about this. And they put it on their bee sting, and I wish I would have had a movie because he was just running around yelling, "It works, it works, it really works." It was really fun. But if you're hardcore enough, as I am, you would take one of those leaves and you chew it up a little bit, and the saliva releases the qualities of the leaf, and it kind of macerates the leaf enough to when you put it onto your wound or your bee sting or bug bite or whatever, it helps to activate things quicker. The native people called this white man's foot because it followed them as they traveled west through America. It's very softening and cooling. I do use it in my foot cream, and it even has the Latin name Plantago major. Plantago is Latin for foot, or the root word anyway. So here's St. John's wort. Here's another one the Europeans brought over. We do have some native hypericum too, and then there's some European species, but this one was used in Europe for millennia before the Europeans came here. And I'm sure everybody knows this. It blooms around St. John's Day, which is June 24th, my wedding anniversary. And this one, it's more in full bloom, more around the 4th of July in our region. But it's really a fabulous plant. I use it in the winter if I find myself getting grumpy and just wonder, why are you getting grumpy when you have a good life, you know? And I feel like by me taking this in a tea or a tincture form, that, you know, in the winter, you just feel that black cloud over your head. For me, when I take St. John's wort, it just feels like that cloud moves away and the sun can shine in your psyche again. And in fact, if you look at the leaves of St. John's wort, like between you and the sunshine, you'll see little, and they're actually like little windows in the St. John's wort leaf. And that, you know, so anyway, I say that does help to collect the sun. And this is just a very cool plant. But it does grow wild in the prairies and the roadsides. And the part used is the flowering tops. And in fact, in the 1800s, everybody had a topical version of St. John's wort for bruises and achy muscles, and it was called just red oil. And if you want to feel like an alchemist, collect some of these flowers in the summer and put them in a jar. It's nice if you could let them wilt again first, so the water, the moisture from the flowers isn't going to get into the oil. Because what the trick is, you put these flowers in a oil, any oil that you wouldn't mind rubbing on your skin. Olive oil is very thick and heavy. It would be good used for a lip balm or a salve. But for directly onto your skin, I like a lighter oil like sunflower or almond or something lighter. Anyway, if you put that jar in the sunshine for a couple weeks, it turns a bright red. It's just really fabulous. And that is a really great remedy. So St. John's wort helps to repair nerve endings. And so this is a really good one for neuralgia or wounds. Yeah, so and this is fascinating. So as there, for a while, these standardized herb extracts were popular, and people were starting to standardize St. John's wort to a certain percentage of hypericin, one of the active ingredients. And they found that when St. John's wort was standardized and processed like that, they would actually like cause the liver to kick out the pharmaceutical drugs. And so that can be a really bad problem. Yeah, so, but it's never happened with the whole fresh herb. And at least in my research and talking to other herbalists. So here's another European plant that grows throughout our region, mullein. And I mentioned how it's so great for earaches, but also the leaves are very useful for lung ailments. In fact, in the old days, like in the 1800s, they used to dry the leaves and kind of burn them so the smoke would release, and they would inhale that smoke for asthma, of all things. It's very counterintuitive for us now with the smoke situation. But anyway, it was just a way that they could get this into the lungs. I have it in my minus sinus tea, which is my best-selling tea, and I believe it helps assist there in that way. And I already talked about the earache remedy. And the root, I've never used the root, but it is a remedy for muscles. And yeah, somebody, I think it was Jim McDonald, is a famous herbalist from Michigan. And the root is very straight. It's a tap root. And he said that, like, for some, I just don't know how this would work, but I don't know how a lot of these herbs work. I just have seen them work. But, you know, something about like a backache, and somehow this root tea helped them with their backache. So this is a weed that I have great reverence for. This is wild lettuce. The flowers, it kind of looks like dandelion part of the year. The flowers look like dandelions too. And the leaves kind of do, only they have more of this white lactate kind of lactose, I think, type of ooze that comes out of them. They are related to poppy. So this is a very cute story, but I was thinking of my friend's husband who's a really bad insomniac, and I was weeding out my valerian patch, and what I was pulling out was wild lettuce. And I thought of the Beatrix Potter stories and how the Flopsy bunnies all fell asleep when they ate Mr. McGregor's bolted lettuce. And they ate all those stems and they fell asleep. And I also had a Brazilian meditation teacher for over 20 years. And she said in Brazil, what they did was if they couldn't fall asleep, they'd get a romaine lettuce and take the leaves off, chop up the stem, and make a tea out of that to fall asleep. So I was just thinking of these stories as I was pulling out, weeding my valerian, which isn't good for everyone. Some people react badly to valerian. And so I started looking it up, and sure enough, nobody contemporary was using this as a remedy, but it was in the old herb books as a sleep remedy and also for pain. So I formulated my hypnotic sleep aid based on wild lettuce, and it quickly became my #1 best-selling tincture. So for a weed that I don't have to buy a seed or anything, this provides a lot of income for me. So I am super grateful to wild lettuce. Yay. Okay, here's another plant we love to hate because it can sting us. Well, herbalists love this plant. It is so loaded with minerals. So in order to extract minerals in a tea form, you need to steep that tea longer. So when I make a tea with, say, I had peppermint nettle earlier today, I would pour my water over the tea, and I would have a cup of tea because I wanted it. I just made it then. But then I would pour more water over it and let it steep for several hours so the minerals could extract into the water. They're larger molecules than, say, volatile essential oils. So that's the way you can get more minerals out of your tea. I heard this great story too, is that back in right after World War II or around World War II, when they had started canning, like in tin cans, green beans, you know how the color comes out of them, they were actually dyeing them back with nettle because nettle has more chlorophyll than any other plant. And you know, chlorophyll is very closely related in its chemical makeup to our blood. So this is a very strengthening herb. And it's very diuretic, so it promotes detoxification. Contains histamines. So when you take big enough doses of nettles, your body creates antihistamines. So people get results during the allergy season just from like big doses of nettle tea, like maybe like a quart of a strong infusion, 1 a day or more. But it's not as long-term as an over-the-counter thing, but it does work short-term, and I think it's so delicious. I mean, the flavor of nettles is so good, and I'm sure I'm not the only one in the crowd who eats the tender little shoots. It's very restorative to the lungs. It's so rich in iron and vitamin C because of all the, in fact, the term nettle means to twist, as in fibers, and this was a fiber crop in Hungary for a while. And so it says here, good for hair and nails and connective tissue. It has a lot of, I'm forgetting what the word is now, like silica that can keep your nails and hair strong and keeps in it. In fact, I have a scarf made out of nettles, and it's not all pokey. So anyway, this one is really great. I love this plant. If any of you have big patches of it anywhere that you know of that has no sprays around it, let me know. I might come and help you get rid of them. And then, of course, our lovely Echinacea. This plant is from America, but in Germany, they study herbs and do double-blind studies, not just on chemical drugs, but on herbs as well. and their equivalent to the FDA is called German Commission E. And they have done so much research on Echinacea that we looked to German Commission E for some of their research. And they found that Echinacea is really an amazing immune stimulating plant. So what it does is it makes your white blood cells like go into action. Like, is there an infection? Like, what should I take care of? Like, let's round them up and, you know, take care of this. So that's the way Echinacea works. It's an immune system stimulant, different than astragalus, which is an immune system tonifier, something that helps to make your immune system stronger over a long period of time. And of course, this one is so beautiful. It's a hardy perennial. You can use the flowers, the leaves, or the root. And I just take this every time I come home now. And there's 3 different species. The one that's native to Sauk County is Echinacea pallida. And then there's Echinacea purpurea, the one that you see in our wheelbarrow there, our garden cart. And the Echinacea angustifolia is the western species, and I've tried growing that, but I can see it just doesn't like real soil. I mean, maybe if I grew it in my driveway, it would do okay. But yeah, that just likes it too dry and gravelly. So, and then there's our lovely elderberry. This one is just so fabulous. Every part is useful. It's known as the medicine chest of the folk people, but the berries have been proven to be antiviral. This has been proven in a double-blind study in Israel. So in the kibbutz, everyone would get the flu at once. So they gave, you know, the placebo to half and elderberry to half. And the people who took the elderberry had a much shorter duration of the flu and less symptoms. And I can absolutely swear to this one. I remember when like a flu would go around in the school and my kids would get the flu, I would give them like elderberry tea, and actually our favorite is elderberry pie, recipe from Laura Lynch. But so I remember, I think it was Sylvia, maybe Savannah, I don't know, was on the couch for 1 day. That's all. They were better the next day. And I will give the credit to elderberry on that, and maybe plus a strong immune system and the right nutrition to begin with, of course. But there is so much research done on this, and if you want to look into it, I have some references at the end, but there's a doctor, Donnie Yance, out of, I think, Seattle, who he's an herbalist and a Jesuit and a cancer, has a cancer clinic there. So anyway, he's just brilliant, and he has a really great article on elderberry on his website. So the elder flowers are also medicine. Those are diaphoretic. So what that does is bring on a sweat. So like, I remember even Laura Lynch told me a story once, and she said there was a man who couldn't get rid of the flu. He just had a fever for like weeks. I think she said weeks. And she said that her and the neighbor ladies made an elderflower tea and had him drink that and take a hot bath and covered him up with blankets, or told him to put on blankets or something, and that he got better. And that's exactly what it says in the herb books too. But that was so cute that she told me the same story from up on the hill as well. So the berries don't really taste great, just right off the bush. They're edible, but there are cyanide constituents in this plant. They're better cooked. They're better cooked or processed somehow, which neutralizes the cyanide compounds. But even the cyanide compounds can be helpful, like for fungal problems. So the root and the bark are also used for fungal problems. And the way you find elderberry, if you don't know how to find it, I always say look between where the the woods edge or around edges. Around the 4th of July, you'll see like creamy white. They're not umbels, they're cymes. They're like flattened white, about this big, flowers. And that's where when you can identify where they are. And then go back when like the tomatoes are gushing out of your garden and you're too busy to even take care of those. And that's the time when the elderberries are ready. So I'm moving on to red clover. Oh, there was another cute story on the elderberry, but I could probably go on, have my whole hour on that. I'm just going to check the time. I'm going to keep moving here. Okay, so, oops. Now we're going to talk about red clovers. Oh. Okay, so red clover is another European plant brought in mainly for cattle and feed. But so this one is escape cultivation and found in open fields and prairies. These are delicious. And they contain a lot of active compounds, isoflavones, phytoestrogen. It makes a delicious tea. This one is so full of minerals. Of course, that's one reason they gave it to cattle. But in herbalism, we call it the herb of immortality. Another alternative, an alterative is a blood cleansing herb used empirically to alter favorably the course of a condition. That's the word alterative, what Merriam-Webster calls it. Used empirically to alter favorably the course of a condition. So this one is great to mix in your tea, just to make a regular tea out of it. Also, the florets or the flowers are edible. We probably all had that experience of nibbling, trying to get the honey out of the end of the floret. But those are really beautiful in a salad too. You can just add those to a salad. And that's another folk anti-cancer remedy. You can research that if you'd like. So here in the fall, we harvest the roots and barks. And this is a tray of the roots. So here is valerian. Here's dandelion. This looks like, I'm not sure, that I can't see what those are. This is astragalus. This is such a great herb. It's not a native or in the wild. There is a native astragalus, but this is membranaceous. My mother was in her 80s and had congestive heart failure and got sick. She was always not really that well, but she got pneumonia 3 years in a row. And I said, Mom, why don't you just try astragalus? And that's the only thing she did different. And she didn't even get a cold for 5 years. And she believed in it so much. She was a retired RN. And I remember when she was going from nursing home to nursing home, she said, I won't move in unless they let me take my astragalus. It made such a difference in her health. It was really beautiful. So here's wild yam. This is really a fascinating plant. This was the most cultivated wild plant in America in the 70s. Why? Because it was a precursor for the pill. And for years, I heard that wild yam only would work for hot flashes or for hormone balancing if it had gone through a lab. So, but yet in the health food stores, there were wild yam creams and people were getting results from that. It took me about 10 years of research because I would not make the cream unless I could really stand behind it and know how it worked. So I was hanging with a naturopath friend of mine who used to teach at Bastyr. And she just said, I asked her about this, and she said, the reason why wild yam works in its raw stage as just the root out of the ground is because the root is very rich in saponins. And saponins are what our hormones are made out of. So by putting saponin-rich cream on your wrists or abdomens, you're absorbing this saponin-rich cream. And so instead of your hormones doing a major roller coaster, the saponins are absorbed into your bloodstream and it can kind of modulate that. So this has become one of my, I think my second or third best-selling product now. Yay Wild Yam. This one is harder to grow though, so I actually did collect it out of the ditch when they were widening poor Maple Hill Road, and then collected it and planted it in my fields. So winter, time for harvesting bark and skiing. I had such a great winter skiing this year. It was just really fabulous. So here's wild cherry bark. You can see, I found this picture of this cherry bark syrup. You can see how far back it goes by that strange logo. It's probably 1800s. So there's 3 native cherries here in this state: the black cherry, the choke cherry, and the pin cherry. And so we've all heard of cherry bark syrup. So the reason why is because cherry bark is a great antitussive. So I collect, this is the one I collect more in the fall, spring, or winter, really more the fall or the spring. And so I just take the smaller branches, like maybe an inch diameter, and use a potato peeler and peel off the bark. And that just smells so divine. It has a wonderful cherry smell to it. And then you can, this one usually you want to decoct any, which is boil, roots, barks, or fruits like seeds, hard fruits or seeds. To get the constituents out other than leaves, you pour the boiling water over and let it steep. But with this one, the constituents are released a little quicker than a lot of other type of barks. So you just boil it for a little bit and then let it steep for a while. And just that simmered down to concentrate it with honey is an amazing cough syrup. Really, really fabulous. Oh, what happened to my oak bark? Oh, here, it's the next slide. So, okay, so yeah, here's the recipe. It's pretty much just what I said. Gather the cherry bark, and then you kind of simmer them for a little while. Really good to just let that steep overnight. You strain off the herbs, then add equal quantity of honey, and then some brandy to preserve it. And that is an awesome cough syrup. I made some of that. I still have some available at my apothecary if anybody wants to try it. Okay, I did have a slide for oak bark, and that one you do gather in the winter, like right before maple syrup season. And one year I was collecting oak bark and I had thick leather gloves on because it was so cold. And I was just, collecting some. And the next day, my fingertips were cracking because it is so astringent. It is so full of tannins. So if you need to dry out some tissues, like that is a really good astringent herb. I use it in my cream for varicose veins. It would be good, like formulated for hemorrhoids. It's just a really great, astringent plant. So these are some of the herbs that I used this past winter: elderberry, echinacea, boneset, wild cherry bark, St. John's wort, and red clover. And I just wanted to point out, what is a weed? A plant whose uses are not yet known. We already talked about curly dock. Here's a horse chestnut. You collect the fruits, of course, when they fall in the fall. And that one is blended with the oak bark and St. John's wort in the toning vein cream. So when to harvest herbs. So I mentioned this as I went along, but the roots are best in the spring or fall, like when the leaves are gone. So when there's a frost, and then you can still identify where that plant is. All the constituents have gone into the root. So the root is most potent then. The barks, or in the spring when they're just emerging and not all of the constituents have gone into the leaf yet, that's the best time to harvest the root. the best time to harvest barks is either the spring or fall. So either when the leaves are falling off, you know all the constituents are going down through the bark at that time, or in the spring as the buds are swelling. The flowers, of course, as they come into bloom, you harvest them like twice a week to get more continual bloom. And then the leaf or the herb is best harvested just as the flowers are coming into bloom, after the dew is dry, so that you're not collecting a wet leaf. And for drying, I guess I'm referring to if you're using it for drying and not making tea that morning. Before the heat of the day has volatilized the essential oils off. And then the second best time to harvest an herb is when you are there and the plant is there. Because sometimes you just only have that one moment, right? So making herbal remedies for me is very fun, educational, and healing. And what I think is so fascinating about learning about herbs, and I'm just so glad you took your time to learn about this tonight, because I just think this is such an important part of healing. When these plants help you to look closer at yourself. Like, did I mention anything that you might have had an issue with in the past? So it's just so wonderful because you can look close at yourself with proper identification of these herbs. You can engage in those plants, and then just engage in healing. And I really think that's what healing is. Like, I believe we were born to improve ourselves. We're not born perfect. And so we have to engage in our own healing. We have to look at where we have room for improvement. And so I just think herbalism is the best, because I think it's that real sort of healing where you have to engage in your own healing, look at yourself closely. And it's really fun if you figure out what plants could help you, and they might be growing right outside your window. I have a great story like that too. Like the time when I had a little wart on my finger and I thought, oh, what plant can heal a wart? And then all of a sudden this plant was outside my living room window that I never saw before. And I thought, what is that plant? And about a week later, I looked it up and it was celandine. And I looked up celandine and it said heals warts. So I cracked it and I put it on there, and sure enough, my wart went away. So there you have it. Magic. Magic happens all the time.
Hey, Jane, do you have any magic for arthritis cures? Somebody wants to know.
Magically, the picture just came up. But I can't
How does that happen?
Yeah, I don't have any cure. Well, this is what I would use if I had that, but I'd also be working on my liver to reduce inflammation. So this is my product, a liniment for achy muscles or joints. I love this one because it has so many native plants in it. Not all these plants are in it, but prickly ash is in it, and dandelion flowers, Solomon seal, like all those are things that I just pick out in the wild. And I started writing the Latin names. I was making this slide today, and I just couldn't stop. So I just started filling in with the common names. But here we have like violet. These are all things that I use that are in my products. Violet, figwort, grows in the woods here. Prickly ash, Solomon seal, horse chestnut, angelica, arborvitae, juniper, dandelion, Solomon seal, yarrow. I mean, I should have had a slide on yarrow. That one is absolutely amazing. I was at an herb conference once, and they had all the teachers on the stage. There's about 20 of them. And they said, what's your favorite herb? And I would say 80% of them said yarrow. The Latin name, Achillea millefolium. Achilles was a warrior, and he brought this plant with him because it stops bleeding so quickly. It's just amazing. And it also helps to seal things up. So I would never use this unless I was sure there was no like particulate matter, or make sure that the wound was completely clean first. But then I was at an herb conference, and the guy got up there and said, look, I take people in backcountry herb walks, and we were 5 miles in, and somebody slipped down a gravelly slope, and they were really cut up. And sure enough, there was a field of yarrow nearby, and they said they just, you know, crunched it up and put it on him and wrapped a t-shirt or something around his wounds. And they said when they checked it in about a half hour that the gravel had started pulling out of the wound and getting into the cloth. Like, I had never heard something like that. But what I do know is that I've heard so many amazing stories about plants and humans and pets and everything like that, that I have to believe it, because plants can do so many things that you'd never find at Walgreens. Just, I'm telling you, I can guarantee that. And then, so I had to tell you that story, as outdoorsy people you are. And then there's burdock, ginseng, golden seal, sumac, pine, plantain, hawthorn, boneset, blue vervain. I love blue vervain. Oak bark, elderberry, raspberry leaf, oak, or said it twice, nettles, and even more, like jewelweed, chickweed. So there's stuff out there that are just amazing. And, you know, I hope that I've inspired you to try some herbs. So I put together this little reading list. I really recommend everyone read Braiding Sweetgrass. I kind of consider that my Bible right now. Robin Wall Kimmerer was at the University of Wisconsin, but she lives out in New York. But this is such a wonderful book about really making you feel so reverent about that which sustains us, and really cultivates that feeling that we're doing the right thing as earth stewards, and how important it is. I also would recommend Plant Intelligence in the Imaginal Realm by Stephen Herod Buhner. What I love about that book is he's just really pops things out of the box, as far as the theory of man's the smartest, then maybe elephants, then maybe dogs. But no, he says everything has intelligence. And he just, the way he weaves all of that beauty together, you just feel just like all of your plants and all your birds and everything are your neighbors, and you love them all, and you would never probably spray chemical herbicides, would you, after you read that book? Anyway, and then of course everyone should have the Peterson field guides. And if you're looking for how to make things, Rosemary Gladstar has anything by her is lovely and very user friendly. And then here is the Donnie Yance that I had mentioned before. He's amazing. He's just very spiritual and knowledgeable, very scientific. And then because we have Earth Day approaching, and I was looking through my pictures and I found this awesome old picture from BRPA. But I have been researching Gaylord Nelson. I'm going to be teaching with the UW for Earth Day. I feel so honored about that. But Gaylord Nelson, of course, our senator and congressman, and governor, was from Clear Lake, Wisconsin, and of course grew up playing outside and was very enthusiastic about trying to preserve nature. And when he went to Washington, he was just telling all of his fellow congressmen that, we've got to preserve nature. Let's do it. We can do this. And everyone blew him off. And so he thought, how am I going to do this? And he went to see an oil spill out in Santa Barbara. And as he was flying back, he heard about the anti-war protests. And he thought, well, that's how we do this, is we get the people to make the movement. And so in that spirit of people making the changes, I would really like to thank Mary Lockhart Clem for beginning the BRPA, and these founders here. In this picture, we have Ron Pershey, and that might be Maya there.
That is.
And there's Mary and Norb and Ruth and Harold Cruz. And I know we were at Nedra Askey's place that day. So anyway, this is just so important, the work we're doing. I know I really like the social part of it, but all the other things that we do too, all the education, it's just very important because that whole saying of you throw a pebble in the water and there's all the ripples. So we just hope to make a difference here in the hills. And I know BRPA has done so much to preserve land and to bring us together and to educate that I'm really proud to be part of it. And a big shout out to Mary again. And then this is where I am right now in my little apothecary. And I'm right in there. This is just has better internet, so I wouldn't get dropped. Stop by sometime. We have a little retail shop, and I promise you it's not too busy. And then I do look forward to when we can gather again. Here's one of our Christmas parties. And yeah, great picture. Smiles all around. And I just want to invite everybody. I'm going to do, I thought this is a way we could be safe outdoors. It's Thursdays from 6:30 to 8, starting around Earth Day or whenever the plants start showing themselves. I'd like to do herb walks, and so I can do this in person and show people the plants and talk about the plants. And I'll serve tea, but you can bring your beer if you want to make it, that style. I just want to get people together, but in safe outdoors. And I'm going to have herb transplants available this spring. And I am going to have a big open field day on Saturday, August 7th, providing that COVID keeps going away. And there's our address. So anyway, I just really appreciate everyone joining me tonight. Thanks. So are there any questions?
I could reach some from the chat, but let's give her a round of applause. Yahoo.
Thanks.
Hey, Jane, could I ask you something like right before we get to all these questions? I don't think people realize the influence of Laura Lynch on BRPA and Happy Hill and all that stuff. As you mentioned her a number of times, but maybe you could just fill everybody in and just who she is.
Okay, so Laura Lynch is my 100-year-old neighbor living in Sauk City now, at the Meadow, at the Pines. But anyway, so when I first moved up on Wanky Road, she brought me a tray of those deep fried cookies that look like snowflakes. I forgot what they call them. Anyway, we were instant friends, and she was born on the hill. In the house where her brother lived, Paul Pagel. It would going from looking west, it'd be the first house on the west on Wanky Road. Anyway, so her and her 4 other siblings were born there, and then she had moved to San Francisco until the Summer of Love, and then she couldn't stand it anymore, and she moved back up in the hills. And then well, she wrapped my soap for a while, but that's why we spent a lot of time together, because she helped me with Four Elements. And so I would see her twice a week, and she'd tell me a lot of stories. She has such fond memories of the schoolhouse, but she has a lot of bad memories of having to walk there every day. So anyway, I've got some good folklore from her, and I just wish I could remember it all. But anyway, I have some good stories of her. And anyway, she's still with us. She's going to be 101 in May.
So was she kind of like the living embodiment of sort of what you would call that native intelligence about the plants and the land long before Walgreens and the rest of it? Or did she just kind of casually know some of it?
I would say she kind of casually knew some of it, but she definitely knew some of it, because she was that woman of the hill who, they lived so simply up there, but there's great stories. Like on Saturday night, they would come into North Freedom and they would have movies on the side of a building down here. And there used to be 2 butchers in North Freedom, she told me. And yeah, so I am so glad that I was here long enough to have met her. And then I just have to show you this from Charlie Vodak gave me this, and it's on my shelf up here. But so Charlie Vodak was a board member, and he had the Vodak Radio Shack that used to be in North Freedom, but then that moved to Baraboo. But there's this product called restroom deodorant from North Freedom, Wisconsin, and he, so I have that in here. It's funny. So family Bloomquist made this, and so anyway. Just a
Nice.
little bit of folklore and history.
Puts a new spin on Happy Hill Glades.
Yeah, good one.
Joke there for
Good
you.
one.
Yeah.
I got it.
Hey, let me get a few questions off the chat if you're willing to do that for us.
I'd love to.
Here's a timely one from Linda. What do you take if you get COVID and are nursing it at home? What would you recommend?
I would not recommend, because I will tell you what I would do though, because I try to dance around my words. So if I got COVID and I was at home, elderberry, I would be taking lots of elderberry and lots of echinacea. And before I would definitely be taking astragalus, which strengthens the immune system. Like what I do ever since I heard about COVID, I try to take that, not every day because I don't remember, like every other day though. But I just think I know that from experience that these plants are very potent. And so anyway, those would probably be my three. Another one is bone set. I don't know if you know that plant bone set that grows in the wetlands here, Eupatorium perfoliatum. That one in the herb world has been highly touted for the COVID era. I'm not sure what the constituents are, but it not only helps to defend you from getting sick, but it also does something, and I'm not sure what. I don't know how it's antiviral or what it does, but you could look that up, bone set.
Okay. Hey, who was the Donnie fellow mentioned last on the reading list?
Donnie Yance is an herbalist and a Jesuit and I'm not sure if he is an MD, but he works closely with MDs. He would be the go-to guy for herbs with cancer, cancer, and people are looking for herbal support. And he wrote some good books. I have his books on adaptogens. Adaptogens are a group of herbs that help you cope with stress and maintain your well-being. In other words, your body doesn't crash or your mental state of mind.
Okay. Isn't plantain known as soldier's herb, good for bleeding too? That's from Diane Laseski.
Oh, Diane, I have never heard it called soldier's herb, but that's the thing with common names. I love looking at common names because there's like 20 common names for a lot of these plants. That doesn't mean anything that I haven't heard that. But yeah, I would say for any kind of wound, in fact, Ed Smith, who is the owner, well, not the owner now, but the founder of Herb Farm, the most popular liquid extracts, that orange bottle that you get liquid tinctures, Ed Smith and Herb Farm. Anyway, he said he was walking through New York City and a cab came by, and so he jumped up a curb and he smashed his toe on the curb, and he just went in Central Park and found a bunch of plantain and put that on his toe, and it stopped the bleeding and took away the throbbing and got it on its way to healing. So Diane, good point. It is good for that.
So Jane, a lot of these plants that we were taught as kids are weeds. They probably showed up right along with people when they showed up from Europe or other countries they came from. Wouldn't you think?
Well, a lot of them are native and a lot of them are escaped from cultivation or naturalized. Yeah, and then, I should point out that, before you try anything, you have to positively ID it. I don't mean to be casual or cavalier with this. You don't want to mess up.
So in that, guys, a lot of us that study birds and trees and the rest of us, we don't really refer to books as much as the internet now. You know, there's all those apps that you point at a plant with your phone. It's pretty good at telling you what's in front of you. That's perhaps a way to do it now, or do you still prefer the books?
That's right. I do have one of those apps I forgot about. Yeah, I don't use my app that I have like that. But you know, that's why I want to do some of this monitoring with you, Todd. So I see some plants I don't know.
Excellent. But, you know, that is a good thing about BRPA. There's still land with those plants living on it.
And that's no small comment there, Todd, at all. I heard Robin Wall Kimmerer speak this winter, and she said 200 species a day are going extinct or endangered. I can't. And I said to David, wow, 200 species a week. And he said, no, she said a day. And
Yeah.
like, I mean, that could keep me up at night if I wasn't doing something about it, right? Oh, that's just, thank goodness for BRPA.
So if anybody wants to unmute and ask Jane a couple questions, now would be that time.
Wow, I answered everything already. Good job.
Unbelievable. Yeah.
Wow, well, this was so fun. I am so honored and happy that I got to do this. I had this talk already made, but I reworked on it all day, and I just was having fun just thinking of these plants. So thank you for letting me live out my mission, which is connecting people to plants for their health and the health of the planet. You know, it's just what I love to do.
If anybody has any questions for you in the future, how do they get hold of you?
Well, I'm right here in North Freedom, and you might have my email, just janehawleystevens@gmail. And
follow Four Elements on Instagram to get information.
Way to go, Savannah. Yeah, she's my social media. This is my daughter, Savannah. She's my social media princess or queen. She just does a fabulous job.
Should we ask her a question? Savannah,
Yeah.
what was it like to grow up with nothing but herbal healing and no aspirin?
It was great. I didn't know what cold medicine was like or anything, but it was kind of shocking when I first had cold medicine. I was like, well, everything went away, but really fast. But herbalism, no, it was great. I learned a lot. Yeah.
Excellent. All right. Jane, do we call that a testimonial? It went well?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. Well, she's so healthy. It's great. And so, yeah, she was born, had eczema when she was just a baby, and that helped me develop my best-selling product for the past 20 years. Because that was pretty creepy to have my baby's skin erupting while I was making herbal skincare. So I really put my mind to that one. And yeah, so, and then Savannah, can I give you a shout out? Like if you ever have to write to our representative, Dave Considine, you might hear from Savannah.
Yeah. Do you have any legislative concerns? You can email Dave Considine if you're from Baraboo, or yeah, I guess Baraboo Range Preservation, probably. That
Yeah, Savannah, have Dave Considine vote to renew the state stewardship fund.
He definitely will, and I'm sure that I'm sure that will be in the budget. There's so much support for it. We've gotten so many emails about it, so thanks to everyone who has contacted the representative.
Yeah, because that is the one state program we have that protects a lot of land and will protect a lot of future land, so it's quite useful.
And in the governor's budget, there's another 10 years and $70 million, so.
Yeah, I know the wider land trust community, and it's pretty well supported, about 75 to 80% over all of our political backgrounds in this state, which are rather challenging at the moment.
There's not a lot we agree on, but we can agree on that, so thank you.
Yeah, which is awesome. All right, so if there's nothing else, let's thank Jane, and we could call it a night. And I will have this and our previous program recorded and up on our website. I was going to do a bunch of other stuff, but I'm just going to load it both on YouTube and then post that there. So thanks, Jane. Thanks, everybody, for coming.
All right, thanks, everybody, for tuning in.
Jane, I was wondering when the store is open.
Monday through Friday, like 9 to 4.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for joining me tonight.
Yeah, okay.
This was great.
Thank
Okay,
you.
bye-bye.
Okay, good night,
Thank
everyone.
you, Todd. This was wonderful.
Yeah, thanks
Thank
for
Good
coming
night,
over.
everybody.
Jane, we'll talk to you another time, sometime
That's
soon.
Thank you.
Hey, wait.
All right, see you on the hill.
Yeah, you got it.